All right, listeners, buckle up. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a city that's both ancient and incredibly modern, a place that's been called the Chicago of China.
Wuhan.
The Chicago of China. I like that.
Yeah, we've got some fascinating sources to guide us today. A document all about Wuhan, packed with history and insights.
Okay.
And get this, some info from FlightNHotels.com.
Now, that's an interesting combo.
Right. But trust me, it all ties together. Before you think it's just for booking, hold on. It actually reveals a clever strategy for scoring some sweet travel deals. We'll get to that later. But first, let's talk about that nickname, the Chicago of China. What does it even mean to you?
Well, it makes me think of a city that's bustling, industrial, maybe even a bit gritty, a place that's constantly reinventing itself, kind of like how Chicago rose to prominence in its heyday.
Exactly. And geographically, Wuhan's location is key. Right in the heart of China, where the Yangtze and Han rivers meet. It's been a powerhouse for over 3,500 years.
Wow, that's a long time. Right, think about it. Older than some entire empires. No wonder it's been a hub for commerce, culture, and even revolutions throughout history.
You know, the Chicago of China comparison really hits the mark when you consider how both cities boomed.
Oh, how so?
Their locations on these major waterways made them transportation hubs.
Right.
They drew in industry and fueled rapid growth. And what's really fascinating is how they both had to adapt and reinvent themselves over time to stay relevant.
So we have this image of a city steeped in history, but also pushing forward, constantly evolving. Okay, so for someone visiting today, where do you even begin to explore a place like that?
Well, your sources highlight some iconic spots, ones that really capture the essence of Wuhan. Like, for instance, you absolutely can't miss the Yellow Crane Tower.
Ah, yes, I read about that. It's not just a pretty picture, is it?
No, not at all. It's perched right on the Yangtze River. And here's the thing. It's been rebuilt several times throughout history.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it reflects the city's resilience, its ability to rise from challenges.
It's like a physical representation of the city's story, huh? Rebuilding and reaching new heights each time.
Exactly. But, you know, even with all that history, Wuhan also offers some peace and quiet.
Oh, tell me more. I'm always up for a bit of tranquility.
Well, you have East Lake, the largest urban lake in China, a peaceful oasis right in the middle of all that hustle and bustle.
Wow, that's pretty cool. An urban oasis. I like it.
It is. And it highlights that contrast we're talking about, that ancient history meeting modern life. You can visit a centuries-old tower one minute and then find yourself kayaking on a serene lake the next. Talk about a unique experience.
For sure. Now, speaking of ancient treasures, we've got to talk about museums. Our sources mentioned, too, the Wuhan Museum and the Hubei Provincial Museum. Now, I'm really intrigued by something called the chime bells of Zhengui at the Hubei Provincial Museum. I'm kind of fascinated by ancient instruments. What's the story there?
They're not just bells, you know. They're more like a testament to the incredible craftsmanship and musical understanding of ancient China. They date all the way back to the 5th century BC. And get this, these bells were designed to produce a whole range of musical tones.
Oh, wow. So they were actually played?
Oh, yeah. They were used in royal ceremonies and rituals.
Yeah.
It's like a window into another world of sound and culture.
I can only imagine. What would it have been like to hear those bells centuries ago?
Right.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Our document also mentions the Yangtze River Bridge, the very first one ever built across that massive river. That must have been an incredible engineering feat.
Oh, absolutely. Huge accomplishment, both symbolically and practically, you know. It connected the two halves of the city, facilitated trade and transportation. Think about it, a symbol of progress, connection, a physical manifestation of Wuhan's drive to overcome obstacles and reach new milestones.
Makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, how has all of that growth and modernization affected Wuhan's cultural heritage? But maybe that's a conversation for a bit later.
Yeah, definitely. Lots to unpack there.
Before we get into that, I want to touch on another spot our document mentions, the guocan tai. Now, for our listeners who might not be familiar, the guan is this incredibly ancient 7-stringed instrument. It's like a symbol of Chinese musical tradition. So what's the connection between this instrument and the guan tai?
Well, it's more than just a place. It's an experience. The guan tai is this tranquil garden nestled by East Lake, and it's dedicated to the guantan and its history. A place where people can go to appreciate the instrument's connection to nature, contemplation, and traditional Chinese arts.
It's almost like a living museum, then. where the Guan's legacy is still present, not just something from the past. Makes you wonder what other traditions are being preserved and reinterpreted in modern Wuhan.
Exactly. It's that interplay of old and new that makes the city so fascinating. And speaking of new, I have to mention those impressive modern buildings from your sources.
Oh yeah, the skyscrapers.
The Wuhan World Trade Tower and the Optics Valley Central Tower. Prime examples of the city's ambition. They're not just tall buildings. They're symbols of economic progress and architectural innovation.
But isn't there a risk with all that rapid development? I mean, could it erase some of Wuhan's historical character? How do you balance preserving the old with embracing the new like that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a challenge so many cities around the world face. I think what's important is to approach development with a sense of respect for the past, integrating historical elements into new projects whenever possible.
Right. It's not about erasing the old, but finding ways to weave it into the fabric of the new.
Exactly.
Like those revitalized historic districts you see in some cities, where old buildings are given new life as shops, restaurants, or cultural centers. It's a way of honoring the past while still creating something vibrant and relevant for the present.
Exactly. And don't forget about those public spaces. Parks, gardens, waterfront areas, they can be like bridges between the old and the new, providing a sense of continuity amidst a rapidly changing cityscape.
And speaking of bridges, we can't forget about Wuhan's incredible culinary scene, which is definitely another kind of bridge, connecting people to the city's culture. Your document mentioned Hubei Alley as a must-visit for foodies. What's the scoop there?
Oh, Hubei Alley is a sensory overload in the best possible way. It's this narrow street packed with food stalls selling everything you can imagine, from Wuhan's famous hot dry noodles and spicy crayfish to more adventurous fare. It's a place to sample the city's diverse culinary offerings and soak up the vibrant street life.
It sounds incredible. I'm all about those authentic, local experiences. And food is just such a great way to connect with a culture.
Absolutely. It's about more than just eating, It's like tasting history, tradition, and local ingenuity all in one bite.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But before we all rush off to book flights to Wuhan, let's circle back to that travel hack we talked about earlier. How does FlightNHotels.com fit into all of this?
Well, imagine you're feeling inspired by our deep dive, and you're ready to plan that trip to Wuhan. FlightNHotels can be your secret weapon for finding the best deals on flights and hotels.
I'm all ears, especially knowing our listener is all about efficiency and getting the most out of their travel budget. What's the trick?
Comparison. Even if you have a specific hotel or flight in mind, always check FlightNHotels. They compare prices from multiple providers. You might be surprised at the savings you could unlock. And since Wuhan is a popular destination, there's often a good amount of competition among airlines and hotels, which works in your favor.
Makes sense. It's like having a personal travel agent, but without the extra fees.
Exactly. And the best part, it's super user-friendly. You can filter your search by dates, price, amenities, and even read reviews from other travelers to get an insider's perspective.
So it takes all the stress out of planning and lets you focus on the fun part, exploring. But here's a question. We've talked about all these amazing aspects of Wuhan, but what's the one thing you think our listeners should take away from this deep dive?
That's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway is the power of balance. Wuhan is a testament to how a city can embrace modernity while still honoring its past. How it can be a hub of both innovation and tradition.
It's like a city that's constantly evolving, but never forgets where it came from.
Precisely. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us, whether we're traveling to new places or navigating our own lives.
I love that. It's about finding that sweet spot between preserving what's important and embracing new possibilities. Makes you wonder how that balance, that tension between old and new, plays out in the daily lives of the people who lived there.
Oh, for sure.
Do you think residents of Wuhan feel that pull? Or is it just woven into the fabric of their experience?
That's a really interesting question. Honestly, it's something you could only truly grasp by spending time in Wuhan, talking to the people, experiencing the city firsthand. But I imagine it varies from person to person. Some might feel a strong connection to tradition, while others are more drawn to the city's modern energy.
Yeah, I bet there's even a whole generation that's grown up with this blend as their norm, never knowing anything different.
Right.
That'll be fascinating to explore, how different generations perceive this unique aspect of Wuhan. Okay, but shifting gears a bit, is there anything from our deep dive that particularly resonated with you personally?
I was really struck by the Greek High. It's not just a place. It's an embodiment of how Wuhan values and preserves its cultural heritage. And the green kit itself is such a fascinating instrument.
Oh, yeah.
It represents a contemplative, almost introspective side of Chinese culture that I find really appealing.
I get that. It's like the guiqin is a symbol of a slower, more deliberate pace of life, something that can feel really grounding in the midst of a bustling modern city.
Right.
And the fact that Wuhan has dedicated a space like the Guingtai to honor this tradition, it speaks volumes about the city's character.
Absolutely. It shows that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of tradition. You can have both. The gleaming skyscrapers and the tranquil gardens, the cutting-edge technology and the ancient wisdom. It's all about finding that harmony.
And maybe that's the ultimate lesson we can take from Wuhan, that embracing both the old and the new can lead to something truly unique and vibrant. It's a city that's not afraid to look to the future while still honoring its past. Kind of inspiring, actually.
I agree. Makes you want to pack your bags and experience it for yourself, doesn't it?
Definitely. And for our listener who might be feeling that travel bug, remember, FlightNHotels.com is your go-to for snagging those great deals and making the whole planning process a breeze.
So, to our listeners, we leave you with this thought. As you go about your day, think about the ways you balance tradition and innovation in your own life. What aspects of your past do you hold dear? And how do you incorporate them into your present and future? And hey, maybe one day your journey will lead you to the dynamic city of Wuhan. Who knows what you might discover?
And until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those stacks of sources coming. We love diving deep with you.